Hey guys, this is Mitch with Fine Point CGI, and today we're going to continue our character controller that we built, I want to say last week. And this week we're going to go ahead and put in some basic animations, create a kind of like a cool ghost effect for our dash, and we are going to talk a little bit about exposing parameters and doing some code refactoring. So that's what I have in store for you guys today, so let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and click on our animated sprite because we need to go ahead and add all of our animations and get our character to actually move around while we move the character around. We want to make it look like the character is actually moving around. So I already have this idle animation. I showed you guys how to add this in the previous video, but now I'm going to go ahead and add all the rest of the animations. So we're going to hit this little plus icon and we will call this one run. Whoops. And we're going to click on this little icon here. Then I'm going to click on Platform Metrovania Asset here, which is the asset that we downloaded from itch.io, if you guys don't remember. And we're going to click on our hero char sprite new, and we are going to pick our run animation, which is right here. So let's go ahead and grab that, and you'll see that Godot is going to try to guess what it is, and it says 4 and 4. It's not. It actually is 5 or 6 and 1. So let's go ahead and select our frames. So you select them by clicking on them. Now, the reason why you're selecting your frames, you're saying these are the things I want to be my animation. Let's go ahead and add those frames, and you can see that up here it's showing the run idle animation stuff. If we actually click on our frames, we can watch the frames run. You can see how I can step through each frame, and I can say playing on. If I click this, it'll actually show it playing. Centered determines where your center is. Here, obviously center should be on, but if you shut it off, you can see that it centers here. That's useful if you have a animation that the center is off on your animation. Generally speaking, you'll want this on. Offset just offsets the animation. Flip H rotates the animation. This will be important for later. And flip V flips the vertical position of the animation. This is also extremely useful if you are doing something that has like zero gravity or something where the character can run on the ceiling. So let's go ahead and uncheck playing, and let's add in another animation. Let's call this one jump, and let's click on our little add frames, and let's find our jump right here, and let's change our horizontal to 3 and our vertical to 1. And let's go ahead and select our frames by clicking on them again and add those 3 frames. So now if we hit play, there we go. Nice and simple. So now if we go ahead and hit one more, and let's say take damage, click on this and grab our damage one. Horizontal is 3, vertical is 1, and we're going to click those 3, add frames. So now if we hit play, that's him taking damage. Simple enough, right? So now let's go ahead and code all of this. So first things first, let's go ahead and go up to our player and click on our little script icon there. And we're going to scroll down here and we're going to look at what we want to add. So we want to add our running animation, correct? So we need to come down here to our process run. So let's minimize that process movement here. And we'll type get node, animation node, right? And we'll say quote, and we need to know what our animation node is. And this actually automatically calculated it for us here. It's called animated sprite. So that's perfect. Dot play. Or maybe not. And I'm sorry, this is the animated sprite, not animation node. animated sprite dot play run. All right. So now if we go ahead and play this real quick, and we move our character, you'll notice that now he's playing our little run animation, which is awesome. That means we're halfway there, right? But you'll notice, first thing, the character's not stopping running when we stop moving. So we need to do that first. And then you'll also notice that when we run one way, but the other way, it doesn't seem to work. But if you'll remember earlier, we have that flip H right here, right? And that seems to flip your little sprite. Well, that's exactly what we need to do. We need to flip our sprite if the character's moving the opposite direction. So let's go ahead and go back into our player controller, and let's go ahead and add in our idle animation. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy this, and I'm going to go ahead and paste it in here, and I'm going to call it idle. Whoops, not that one, idle. There we are. And then we're going to go ahead and run it and see what it does. So now you'll notice the character's having a little idle animation. If I run, he runs. If I stop, he stops. Perfect. But you also, again, notice that when you hit the left key, he's going the wrong direction. It's almost like he's just getting blown by wind, right? That's because he is not flipping, right? Like we said earlier. So let's go ahead and close this. Let's go ahead and do that little flip animation, or that little flip here. So let's go ahead and just grab this, copy it, and paste it like this, and say .h .flip h right here is equal to false, and .flip h is equal to true. Now what this is going to do is it's going to allow us to flip our horizontal direction. So if we go back to our player, or back to our if we go ahead and run our project, if you run to the right, it's correct. If you run to the left, it's also correct. And your idle animation is also correct. That's awesome, right? It looks like we're getting there. Now let's go ahead and add in the jump animation. So if I come back over to our little thing here, and we minimize process movement and dash and wall jump, you'll notice that we don't have a process jump, which is something that we should refactor in here, is adding in a process jump. But if we scroll up, you'll notice that there is if input action just pressed jump, right? So if we go get node, animated sprite, make sure I spelled that correctly because I have awful spelling skills, dot play, right? Jump. Okay. So now if we refresh and we jump, you notice that nothing seems to happen, right? But you'll notice that there's a slight, almost 1 pixel change when he does his little jump. You can see that right there. Why is that? Well, what's going on is the character's jumping, it's playing this animation, and then it's coming up here, and it's seeing that when it processes its movement, I guess it's coming down here, I guess would be an easier way of saying it, and it's going, hey, it's coming down here, and it's saying, hey, hold on a minute, you're supposed to be doing an idle animation. Why are you doing a jump animation? So we need to say, hey, do not play these animations unless you are on the ground, right? Because you don't want to do an idle animation while you're jumping, right? So what we can do is if we scroll all the way up to the top, let's go ahead and add in a variable here. So private Boolean is, let's say, is in air. We'll say false, right? So go ahead and copy that, and let's scroll down to, hey, if you're on the floor and you hit jump, then you must be in air. Awesome. Else, I mean, you must not be on air, right? Sweet. So now that we have that, if we scroll down here and we go to process movement, and we don't want them to play these animations here. So if is in air, so if you're not in air, whoops, not in air, then I want you to play that. If you are also not in air, then I want you to play this little animation here. Oh, whoops, that's actually doing the wrong one. Oopsies. Before I make that mistake. There we are. So now if I go ahead and I hit play and I jump, you'll see that I'm playing my animation of jump, which is great. That's exactly what we want. And if we're running forward and we jump, you'll see that it now plays the correct animation. Now, something that you'll also notice is if we do a wall jump, it's not angling our body correctly until we click the arrow in the proper direction. See that? So that's not okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So let's go back to our player controller. If we scroll down to our wall jump here, and we say, hey, if you're colliding, you are wall jumping, raycast to the left, it means that you need to rotate the player to the right. So if we scroll up here, we grab our flip H, and we go ahead and paste that here, and go ahead and paste that here. And let's say false. Whoops. Goodness, I can't type today. All right. So now this should flip our little sprite here, providing that I don't have it flipped over. So let's see. So now we go up against this wall, and I have it the wrong direction. Awesome. So let's go ahead and flip them. I had a 50-50 shot, and I got it wrong. Let's try it again. So now if I run forward, I jump, wall jump. There we go. Awesome. Simple enough. That's perfect. Okay, cool. Now, one thing that doesn't come with the character pack that we pulled was a wall climb ability or a wall climb animation. So that's something that if you guys have one, just go ahead and add it in and it'll work fine. But yeah, there we go. Okay, so now that we have all of our animations going and everything seems to be working out quite well, what we need to do is we need to create a dash shadow-like effect. So like when you jump and you dash, you can see that you kind of do your thing, right? You dash or you run or whatever, right? But it'd be really cool to have some kind of ghost-like effect that would kind of trail behind the character. So let's go ahead and create that little effect here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right-click here. I'm going to add in a node 2D. I'm going to call it a ghost player, and I'm going to go ahead and add in another child node, and I'm going to add in a sprite. And then I'm going to right-click here, and I am going to add in an animation player. All right. So what we'll do is for the sprite, let's go ahead and pick kind of like a dashy sprite if we have one. And let's take a look at our sprites here. Let's take this one, I think. So if we focus in on our sprite, and you can see that we have our three little sprites here, and we don't want all three, we actually just want one. So let's go ahead and go to animation and say, hey, for horizontal frames, we have 3 of them, and that'll cut it down to be the proper size here for us. So now that we have this, let's go ahead and go to our animation player, click on our animation, have a new animation, call it fade out. And let's go ahead and add in a track here, and let's add in a property track. And let's click on our sprite here and hit OK. And choose our modulate section here. This will allow us to change our colors and to do things like that. So if we click open here, and let's make this about a 0.3 in terms of time, and let's right click, insert a key, Let's drag that to the front. And then let's go up into this little animation, hit insert key. And on this little key here, we're going to go value. We're going to change the alpha down to 0. So what that's going to do is it's going to slowly fade it out behind the character. See? So now we need to create a script for this. So let's go ahead and attach a script and say ghostplayer.cs. That's perfect. And it will open it up inside of Godot. So the first thing that we need to do is on ready. Let's go ahead and get node animation player. And we will say quote animation player dot play. And then we're going to say play our fade out. All right. So what that's going to do is on start, this animation is just going to go ahead and play our fade out animation. Now, I'm sure, yeah, I can actually probably just set this as current animation fade out. And I'm sure that'll just do it for me. But I don't know. I like the idea of having code here. So now what we're going to do is we'll go to our player because our player now needs, and actually, well, yeah, let's go to our player first. We'll go ahead and open up our player script and we're going to need to get a reference to this scene here. Okay. Now, this is something that I haven't covered inside of Godot just yet in my C# tutorials. So I will show you how to export out things into your Godot properties panel over here on the right. See how they got all these little properties and stuff for the inspector? You can actually export out values to be used outside of here. So what you can do is you do these little two braces here and say export. Let's go enter and go public packed scene and call it ghost player. All right. And what that's going to do is when I click build up here in the upper right hand corner, you'll see when I click on the player, it now has this little packed scene. So it takes in a packed scene. Okay. And what a packed scene is a scene that's been saved out to here. So what we can do is we can actually right click our little node here and say save branch as scene, and we can call it ghostplayer.tscn. So now when we get rid of this, if we get rid of this, so now it's out of our scene, we can actually just drag our ghost here to our player. And there you go. Simple enough. So now what we can do is if we go into our player script, we scroll down here, we can say, hey, if you're dashing, right? If is dashing, dash timer minus equals delta, right? So we can also say ghost player, ghost is equal to ghost, what did I call it? It was a pack scene, ghost player. Oh, I did it with capital G. We'll call this ghost player instance. Just because it's a little easier to maintain the two, because I have ghost player and ghost player, the class, and it'll get funky. So let's just say ghost player instance. I think that'll be easier. And then we're going to cast it as a ghost player. Awesome. So what that's going to say is, hey, we're going to spawn a ghost player to just show up in our scene. Now, when we spawn it, it's going to spawn it at world center. It's not going to actually spawn it at the character's location. It's going to spawn it at the actual world center. So you're going to need to move it to be in your, I guess, character's space, right? So what we can do is we can say ghost.global position is equal to this dot global position. And what that's going to do is that's going to spawn it to my location. Okay. So now if I save and I run this project here and I dash, you'll notice that suddenly everything just crashed. Well, what the heck happened, right? Well, if you look at your player, this is empty. So if it's empty, it's a null value. So since it's a null value, Godot just crashes. So you'll need to drag ghost player up here to make sure that it is here. So now if we go ahead and we run our project again, and we run and dash, you'll notice that nothing seems to have changed. Now, why is that? Well, let's go ahead and take a look. So if we scroll down here, Oh, where did I put it? Here it is. You'll notice that we are spawning the player here, but we're spawning it underneath our player, if that makes sense. So it's following our player and it's being clipped by our character sprite. So what we can do is we can say owner dot add child, and then we can just add the ghost child. And what that will do is that will spawn it outside of our player space, if that makes sense. So it no longer follows the player. So now if I hit play and I go ahead and run it, well, that's kind of what we wanted. It's a little on the large side, but that's kind of what we wanted. So that's a good start. So let's go ahead and see, is our scale on our player different? Doesn't look like it. So we're going to have to go and instance one of our ghost player scenes in here. So let's instance that in here. So let me see. I might just need to figure it by doing, oh, shut that off. Still a touch bit too big, so let's make it even smaller. Again, there's probably a better way of doing this, but that's all right. So let's go to our animated sprite and change it to jump so I can see what the size difference is. Let's make it a touch bit bigger. That's about right. Let's see. Yeah, that's about right. And it looks like I must have scaled it a tiny bit on this end as well. So let's go ahead and do that as well. So we can try to make them look similar-ish. Awesome. So now let's go ahead and delete our ghost player. Let's go ahead and try our dash again. And this should be fairly close. Yeah, not too shabby. That's not too shabby. So now what we can do is we can go ahead and take a look at our flipping of the sprite. Remember how when we did our left and right, we needed to flip the sprite. So it was flip H like this, right? So if the character was flipped one direction, if they were going to the left, it would dash, or it would show the sprite in the correct direction versus being shown in the wrong direction, right? So what we can do in that case is we can go into our ghost sprite. We can click on our little script here, and we can say public void set H value. And we'll say that takes a Boolean. Whoops, not value. And we can say get node sprite. And we can say sprite, quote sprite. Dot flip H is equal to value. Awesome. So now what that's going to do is it's going to say, hey, whoops, did not mean to press that. So what that's going to do is that's going to say, hey, set my flip H to whatever my value is. So now if I go back to my player controller here and I say ghost.set H value is equal to my animation node, right? My animated sprite here, right? So if I come up here and I do that and I go dot flip H, what that's going to do is that will set my H value to whatever their H value is. And actually, I can just do this. I forgot. I'm using a function, aren't I? And there we go. So now if I go ahead and I hit play, dash, dash, you can see that now it matches, which is perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. So that's pretty decent, actually. That's pretty decent. Awesome. Sweet. So the last thing we need to look at is every single time the player dashes, it makes these instances, right? But we're not actually deleting them from the project tree, right? So they're actually just staying in memory. And that's the definition of a memory leak, right? We don't want to have a memory leak in our project. So we need to destroy these when they're done animating. So what we're going to do is we'll go into our script here. We're going to come here and we're going to say public void destroy. And we'll type query or queue free. All right, what that's going to do is when this is called, it will go ahead and destroy this ghost sprite. So what we can do now is we can go here. And actually, I should probably show you, right? So if I hit get rid of that and I save, let me go ahead and show you before I go ahead and delete them. So you can see they don't ever go away. See how they just stay there forever? So eventually, you're just going to have hundreds of little hidden nodes just with a bunch of data in them. See that? So that's unsustainable, and it just keeps increasing your draw calls and just keeps going forever. So what we can do is if we uncomment that. If we go to our animation player, we click add tracked, call method track, and we go to our ghost player. We come to our end, we right click and insert a key. We're going to say void destroy. So we're going to say, hey, go ahead and run this once everything's completed, right? So go ahead and open that. If I uncheck our modulate, right, and I save, I'll show you this as demonstration purposes. So we'll build our solution. Oh, goodness. Did something break? Let's see. Yes, something broke because I left my animation player. There we go. Sorry, they weren't showing up because I had them hidden. So now if I go ahead and I play it, it should spawn them and then immediately delete them. See that? But they're not fading out, which is a problem, which is why we have our animation player here with our little modulate function. There you go. So now it is actively deleting and destroying the dashed clones, which is perfect. That's exactly what we wanted. At this point, we have one last thing to do, and that is to do some code correctness here. I'm not going to lie, this player controller is just plain awful when it comes to its get nodes. You can see all these get node animated sprites here. That's just awful. If I hit Control F and I try to find them, there's 8 of them. And we don't need to have 8 animated sprites here. So let's go ahead and copy this. Scroll up here and say, hey, private animated sprite, and call it, I don't know, animated sprite. Simple enough, right? And we'll say animated sprite is equal to, and we're going to go ahead and paste that. All right. And now what we can do is we can say replace animated sprite with this. So the get node with this. And then if we go to our next one right here and we just replace them, there we go. Oh, and it got that one because I wasn't paying attention. There we go. So now it's going to just use this reference instead of actually going out and getting the node. We just needed to clean up those little get nodes here. One of the things that I was always told was write efficient code and write code that makes sense. So when you're prototyping and just kind of throwing this together and slapping it together, it's okay to write code however you want, but make sure that you have these times where you go through and you clean it up and make it look good, because you're going to need to maintain this code. And if you make it unmaintainable, it's going to be a nightmare in the future to deal with. But with that being said, guys, that's all I have for you guys today. So we went ahead and learned about exporting values out of a C# project. We went through and added in a dash ghost player that gets spawned behind the player. We also added in all of our little animations for running and jumping and things like that. So I want to thank you guys again so much for watching, and I'll see y'all next time. Thanks.